and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. Today I have two really cool bikes here, and I'm going to be doing a ride comparison back to back. The first bike here is one that you've seen before on the channel. It is Honda's 1979 CB750K. I bought this bike over the winter as a non-runner, and it was a little bit of a saga to get this bike back up and running. It has 6,900 original miles on it right now, and it's just a beautiful bike. In 1979, Honda introduced their brand new CB750K, and this really replaced the first generation Honda CB750. They had an all-new frame, an all-new 16-valve, dual overhead cam, 4-cylinder motor. It was really introduced to compete with bikes like Suzuki's GS550, and it was kind of heralded as the first CB750 that actually handled well. And so this bike is actually comfortable in the corners. It actually does turn nicely, but some of the carryover parts from the original CB750, it still has a single disc front brake and a single drum rear brake. The CB750K model was designed to be do-it-all basic motorcycle transportation. The newcomer here is a 1981 Suzuki GS550T. Like the Honda CB750, this bike was designed to be good basic motorcycle transport. It had a single disc front brake, and it also has a disc rear brake, so that actually gives it a little bit of an advantage over the Honda. The Suzuki GS550T also has a 4-cylinder motor, also has a dual overhead cam motor, but in the GS550T, I'm pretty sure this is an 8-valve motor. It's not a 16-valve head on this motor, so it's a little bit simpler that way. I know the carburation, both of these motorcycles have constant velocity, a bank of 4 carburetors, but the carburetors on the Suzuki are also a lot simpler than the key-in units that are on the CB750. Both of these bikes are exhaust-wise, they both have dual exhaust. I know the Honda came with a 4x4 system, but what is fitted on it now is a 4x2. Both of these bikes are basically non-adjustable in the suspension department, except for preload in the rear suspension. So they're both roughly equivalent there. They were really set up and designed to meet the same purpose. Both of these bikes have chain final drive. The Honda does have the spoke wheels versus the mag wheels that are on the Suzuki. The Suzuki only has 2,700 miles on it currently, and so both of these bikes are really low mileage, fairly clean examples. The Suzuki was in actually cleaner original condition than the Honda. Both of these bikes have original paint, but on the Suzuki, I had to do much less to get it ready, to get it kind of ready to rock. But I thought this would be an interesting comparison because both of these bikes were designed to almost identical design criteria. They are both meant to be, good everyday drivers, a bike that you could really do any type of riding on, and they really adhered to the formula of the UJM, the Universal Japanese Motorcycle. They were not focused bikes. This was not a super sport, neither was the 550T. They were designed as standards. Both of them fulfill that mission very well. But really the interesting thing is, what are these bikes like to drive back to back? How do they compare with one another? How do their differences carry over to what they're like out on the road? I'm going to grab my helmet. I'll bring the camera along. Let's find out together. Let's ride.
I'm currently riding Honda's 1979 CB750K. I'm riding this bike back to back with Suzuki's 1981 GS550T. The first thing I'm noticing riding this Honda is that it handles differently, and I think it's the kind of the tire sizes, but it does roll easily from side to side, and then once it's rolled over, it really holds that line, so you kind of have to pick it up, but it's very neutral in the handling. And I've said it before on other videos, but the handling on this Honda is unique among my vintage bikes. It actually takes me a little bit of time. After riding the other ones, it takes me a little bit of time to get used to the way it handles, but it does handle very nicely. The braking feel on this Honda, even though I've got upgraded brakes, it still feels a little bit wooden compared to the Suzuki, and that may be pad material. This Honda's a little bit bigger motorcycle. It's a little bit of a reach to the bars. Now I've upgraded the handlebars on this bike. It originally sat a little bit more like the Suzuki did, but I like the lower bars for control. This bike does have nice control. The handlebar really changed the handling of this bike and made it a lot more confidence inspiring in the handling department. The transmission on this bike shifts nicely, and you can definitely feel the extra engine size on this bike. It does pull away cleanly, it carburetes nicely. And this one is a 5-speed versus a 6-speed in the Suzuki. At 60 miles an hour, this one is right at around 5,000 RPM. That's a little bit interesting to me, simply because I would think a bigger bike would have taller gearing. And that does a very nice pickup once the revs get up. Vibration wise, I do get some vibration through the seat, through the pegs, and through the handlebars. It's not really annoying, but I can definitely feel it. With the fairing and the lower bar on this bike, I've also done a little bit of suspension tweaking on it. It definitely has kind of that vintage cafe racer feel to it. It has a noticeable advantage in low-end grunt over the Suzuki. And the CB750, it honestly feels of an older generation. And even by 1981, the competition, it feels like it moved on. And so it just, when I ride this bike, it's the oldest feeling of all of the motorcycles I have. It takes a little bit more skill and a little bit more concentration to push this bike quickly in the corners. If you're just tooling down through the countryside, there's really not much of a difference between a lot of the motorcycles. If you're just, you know, taking it easy at a normal pace, but if you're actually doing a little bit of sport riding or getting on it, you know, that's when kind of these differences between the bikes really start to reveal themselves. One other thing I'll touch on here is that this Honda has these spoke wheels on it. And I've noticed on bikes that have these spoke wheels, it feels to me like the spoke wheels can move around a little bit more than like a aluminum mag wheel. And I like the fact that this Honda is different than the other motorcycles in the garage. I like the fact that it's, you know, it does feel vintage. It feels like every time I ride it, it feels kind of like a vintage cafe racer. And I think that's cool, but it also comes with, when I ride it, and especially if I'm riding it quickly, it does take more concentration, and I have to be more aware of the limitations of the brakes and the chassis and everything else. I am currently riding Suzuki's 1981 GS550T back to back with my 1979 Honda CB750K. And first thing I'm noticing, one, the bars are closer to me. I'm sitting more upright on this bike than I was on the Honda CB. And this bike has a much lighter feel to it. Even the bike between my knees, the gas tank is much smaller and narrower, and I just definitely get the impression that I'm riding a smaller motorcycle. Vibration between the two, vibration level honestly feels fairly similar. They're both revving almost exactly the same. I thought the Honda was revving a little bit higher at speed, but at 60 miles an hour, both of them rev almost 5,000 RPM exactly. So they're geared identically at top gear. And I definitely on this Suzuki feel like I've got a lot less bike in front of me. The handling on this bike is a little bit different. It feels more like what I'm used to, and it's a little odd after getting off the Honda. The Honda just has such a unique feel to the handling on that bike. And while I have to acclimate to the Honda every time I get on it, this Suzuki is instantly confidence inspiring. It does not have the mid-range and low end of the Honda motor. Definitely the Honda has the edge in motor. But it has better brakes. To me, it's more intuitive in the handling department. It's very light and manageable. I would definitely pick this bike over the Honda if I were recommending a motorcycle for a less experienced rider. It's just much easier to manage, it's much easier to drive, it's much easier to handle, and it just has a more confidence-inspiring feel to it, such that if something would happen, I feel confident that a newer rider would have an easier time dealing with it on this motorcycle. The brakes, especially the front brake feel, is far superior to the Honda. If I want to hustle it in the sporting department, the nice thing is that even though it is a kind of a lower level bike in the model lineup, it's not a flagship model, the suspension is still very compliant. It handles nicely. It doesn't wallow about. It doesn't dive overly badly on braking. And so if I wanted to pick up the pace, I could certainly do that on this bike. This is a fairly easy bike to change line in the middle of a corner. And it also has the good brakes front and back that allow you to stop quickly if you need to. Very nice. Yeah, it's surprising to me that even though there's basically 2 years that separate this bike and the Honda, how much more modern this Suzuki feels than the Honda does. I would just say it's light, agile, fun, intuitive, and everything about this Suzuki is very, very well balanced, meaning the brakes are well matched with the suspension. The suspension is up to the power generated by the engine. The level of refinement, everything, the transmission and the engine work well together. They both have a similar level of refinement to them. The instrumentation is better on this Suzuki. It's got the gear indicator, which is super nice. And it's just a pleasant bike to ride.
All right, that was fun. To my eye, the Honda is just, I really like the styling on that bike. I think these are both very cleanly styled motorcycles. I did do a little bit of custom work with the MGO fairing. I did the pinstriping on the fairing to kind of tie into the rest of the bike. And I like the way it looks with the fairing and the lower handlebar. I just think it looks neat. The motor in the Honda is also really kind of the star of this comparison. It's definitely stronger. It's a bigger motor. It's also a 16-valve motor, so it has significantly more grunt up top. To me, the Honda CB750K is also very rewarding to drive quickly, and I really like driving it in a sporting way, a little bit aggressively. It's fun, but it definitely takes a much higher degree of concentration. I'm very much aware that even though the engine is stronger, that the brakes are not as strong as the GS brakes. And so, again, it just takes that concentration. You can hustle it, and it is rewarding. I really like that about it. Vibration-wise, these bikes are about the same. Comfort-wise, at lower speeds, the Suzuki has the advantage, but at higher speeds, just due to the fact that the Honda has the lower bars and the MGO fairing, I think it would be more comfortable at higher speeds over a longer period of time. And that brings us to the Suzuki here. This bike is just a gem. The motor's not as strong as on the Honda, but it's an 8-valve motor, so it has a lot of usable low-end and mid-range power. It has a slick shifting 6-speed transmission, very nice. Both of the transmissions on these shift very nicely. There's not really an advantage between them. This Suzuki is like a little golden retriever. It does everything you want it to do. It's just very, very friendly. It's very confidence inspiring. It's a fun machine to ride. It feels like you can push it and you don't feel like you're going to overwhelm the chassis. You don't feel like you're going to overwhelm the brakes. Very, very well balanced for what it is, and that just makes it a nice, easygoing place to be, but also one if you really want to kind of turn it up and hit a back road pretty aggressively. This thing, you can ride it quickly if you want to, and I like that. If you're looking for something that just feels more vintage, the Honda is definitely kind of the bike to pick there. If you want the faster bike, again, the Honda is the one to pick. If you like the looks of it, you know, again, the Honda is just it's a neat machine. And it has a unique feel. Of all the bikes in my garage, I don't have any other bike that feels like this does. With the way it handles especially, it's rewarding to drive. I really enjoy driving it. But for, you know, less experienced riders, for a daily driver, for something that you can just hop on and it's not taxing to ride, at the same time it's still fun to ride, man, it's hard to beat the Suzuki. It's definitely not wanting for power. The feel when you ride the Suzuki, especially a less experienced rider, it just takes so little effort to drive this, and to drive it confidently, it takes so much less effort than the Honda. I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.